Ben Hicks proclaiming the Gospel lesson. 1. Jesus ascends to heaven. A new apostle chosen. Introduction to Act 1:1:1. Act 1:1. Reference to former writings. The former account I made, O Theophilus, of all that Jesus began both to do and teach. The former account I made. The former account is the Gospel of Luke. At one time the Gospel of Luke and the book of Acts were joined together as one book with 2 volumes. Imagine what it would be like if the book of Acts wasn't in the Bible. You pick up your Bible and see the ministry of Jesus ending in the Gospel of John. Next you read about a man named Paul writing to the followers. Pick up your Bible and see the ministry of Jesus ending in the Gospel of John. Next you read about a man named Paul writing to the followers of Jesus in Rome. Who was Paul? How did the Gospel get from Jerusalem to Rome? The book of Acts answers these questions. A great New Testament scholar has said that the title of Acts might be, How They Brought the Good News from Jerusalem to Rome. That expansion from Jerusalem to Rome is a remarkable story. Humanly speaking, Christianity had nothing going for itself. It had no money, no known leaders, and it faced enormous obstacles. It was utterly new. It was the subject to the most intense hatreds and persecutions. We know that he was a physician, Colossians 4:14. We know that he was a Gentile, from his name. We know that he was a devoted companion of Paul, from the text of Acts, and Colossians 4:14, Philemon 24, and 2 Timothy 4:11. There was a time when many scholars and critics thought that Acts was sort of a romance novel of the early church, written more than 100 years after the events supposedly happened. But William Ramsey, a noted archaeologist and Bible scholar, proved that the historical record of Acts is remarkably accurate regarding the specific practices, laws, and customs of the period it claims to record. It is definitely the work of contemporary eyewitnesses. Theophilus, this man might have been a Christian wanting instruction. He might have been a Roman official being briefed by Luke about the history of the Christian movement. Or, the name could be symbolic, because the name Theophilus means God-lover. In the introduction to the first volume, Luke 1:3, Luke addresses Theophilus with title Most Excellent, which was a way to address people who held high office. Since Acts ends with Paul awaiting trial before Caesar, some have wondered if Luke Acts are not defense briefs on Paul's behalf to give a Roman official background on Paul's case. Luke arrived in Jerusalem with Paul in Acts 21:17. He left with him again on the journey to Rome in Acts 27:1. In those 2 years, Luke had plenty of time to research and write his Gospel and the book of Acts. Luke used 2 scrolls to tell his story, and one we call the Gospel of Luke and the other we call the book of Acts. Luke wanted to show Theophilus and the Romans that Christianity is harmless. Some Roman officials had embraced it themselves. That Christianity is innocent, Roman judges could find no basis for prosecution. That Christianity is lawful, as the true fulfillment of Judaism, which was an approved religion in the Roman Empire. Of all that Jesus began both to do and teach, notice that the former account concerned all that Jesus began both to do and teach. Luke's Gospel describes only the beginning of Jesus' work, Acts describes its continuation, and the work of Jesus continues to our present day. We must remember that Acts does not give us a full history of the church during this period. For example, the churches in Galilee and Samaria are barely mentioned, Acts 9:31, and the establishing of a strong church in Egypt during this time isn't mentioned at all. Acts spans a period of about 30 years, and takes us up to about AD 60 or 61, with Paul in Rome waiting to appear before Caesar Nero. This same Nero began his infamous persecutions of Christians in AD 64. Wonderfully, what Jesus began still continues. There is a real sense in which the book of Acts continues to be written today. Not in an authoritative scriptural sense, but in the sense of God's continued work in the world by His Spirit, through His church. Ben Hicks proclaiming the gospel lesson, 2.